For day number 2, the tunnel boat finals coming up right after this. It's early morning, day number 2 here at Lake Havasu, Arizona. As you see the beautiful, majestic mountains in the background of California, you see the boats in the water ready to go. They're silent right now, Lee. It's going to be a Le Mans start. This is a lot different than most starts that a lot of people are used to in racing. Tell us a little bit about the feelings that you have to go through when you're about ready to go.
Well, what a Le Mans start is basically the driver. It's called a semi-Le Mans start, which means the driver sits in the cockpit and they shoot a flare off, and anywhere between 1 minute and 0, they'll drop the white flag. And when they drop the white flag, the drivers take off, as they're doing right now, and they're off.
And they all head out for the starting buoy here in lap number 1. And the sun is still trying to come up. It's actually quite dark here as the day begins. But a great vantage point here, Lee. They're coming right at you.
Well, you can really get a good view of the boats. You can see where they're coming off the pit stop, and they're narrowing, like running into a funnel to go around the first corner. Of course, the first corner is out in the middle of the lake, and then they re-enter the course, as we've discussed before.
The Canadian driver from Vancouver, Lee Davies, has grabbed the lead. You know, some drivers have opted to switch. In other words, the person who started day number 1 is starting second in day number 2. Why is that?
I think it depends on who owns the boat and what the situation is. Davies is running very good at this point. He's running light, he's running loose, and he's real quick. You can see Seabold coming up on the outside.
Well, the youngster Mike Seabold, 26, out of St. Louis, Missouri, is nipping at the heels of the Canadian Lee Davis. He wants that lead. He started second in the race yesterday, and more attrition for the boats. You see 2 more drivers trying to paddle toward shore to get close enough to where their crew can come on out and help them. This is going to be disheartening so early on in the race.
Well, they have a rule that if you declare at the end of the first race, within 1 hour after the race, that you can change your engines. But of course, a lot of times what you do is you wear your engine down and it's running well, and you start it back up the next morning, and lo and behold, you've run into problems that you didn't detect the night before.
Well, the race continues on as Mike Seabold had grabbed the lead as he heads off into turn number 3, making the turn back toward the pit area. Mike Seabold started the race today with his father Bill sitting out. It was just the opposite of what happened yesterday. And there you see some of the nice color that they have around here at Lake Havasu. Some of the crew members working. Unheralded heroes they are, as we see one of the boats coming in. Lee, have you ever been in a situation where you've had to be in the boat and they brought you in after an accident?
Unfortunately, I've been packed in several times, and these people are really unsung heroes because they can save people's lives.
Despite the numerous boats that turned over during the weekend, we're happy to report, Lee, that nobody was seriously injured. There's an interesting boat John Castelli drove during the weekend. They made him race that boat in the tunnel class because even though it looks like a modified boat, it had a large experimental engine, and it was asked to race in the champ boat class during the weekend. Some of the crew members turning the boats over. We had a lot of windy conditions, and a lot of boats were getting tossed in the water here, Lee. They're trying to get the boat back, as we can see more drivers trying to paddle their way back toward the pits, hoping to get the crew members close to them. You know, if you see a boat like that, Lee, turned over, what does it take to get that engine back in running shape? Can they do it during that day, or do they have to really wait and put on a new engine?
Well, it can be done, but there's 2 or 3 steps that you have to take. First of all, if you can imagine, under race conditions, the motor turning approximately 9,000 plus RPMs, and it goes into the water and engulfs a big shot of water. What might happen is it might get hydraulic to pieces. You might bend the rods in the engine, break a piston, or whatever. If that hasn't happened, then what you do, if you want to get back in the race, you're going to have condensation setting in, and it's going to cause rust.
How an expensive process is it?
It's time more than anything, when you have to have lots of friends and lots of wrenches if you want to get back into the race.
As the boats come by one more time, we are 1 hour into the race, and we're getting set to go. As they come by, we see Mike Seabold whistling by the leader, who has almost a 4-lap lead. And now they begin their fuel stops. Crew members crawling all over the boat, trying to get it into position to turn around and get the boats right back out as quickly as possible as they leave the pits. And we'll be back for the exciting conclusion of this race right after this timeout. Welcome back as we enter the final hour of the tunnel boat race here at beautiful Lake Havasu City, Arizona. Steve Michael along with Lee Sutter. And Lee, here's an interesting shot. You get a chance to look at the race from the other side of the lake.
And the camera doesn't eliminate the right-hand turn, unfortunately.
Beautiful shot of the mountains here at Lake Havasu. The boats lapping at about a 90-second pace. They seem to be averaging pretty close to about 110 to 115 miles an hour. There's one of the newer boats, a beautiful example going down, heading for pin number 2, as we get a chance to see the city of Lake Havasu in the background. But wait a minute, Lee, the boat here slowed down and it started to head back toward the traffic in this race. It looks dangerous, but what happened here? It
looks like he had an engine failure, and what they have, in the interest of safety again, is they have a rule that you cannot cut across the course. And I'm sure what happened was that when the engine failed, the driver wanted to head for the pit area. But what he has to do is he has to go around the entire race course and then drop into the pits when he gets down into the pit area.
One of the most important things that a car racer has is his rear mirrors. They don't use mirrors on these boats. Why is that?
Well, because of the attitude of the boat, the bow going up in the air and then coming down, it's very hard to get a mirror that will adjust to this, and there's a lot of vibration off of the glass cowlings. I've always wanted to run rear view mirrors, and some drivers have tried to do it, but there isn't a mirror that works that well yet. So they just simply swivel their head, look around, and make sure it's clear to make their move.
Well, being so confined in the cockpit, how much actual room do you have to swivel your head to see another driver behind you?
Well, there's plenty of room to swivel your head, but the problem has been, and it's always a problem, is whether or not the other driver looks.
You know, Lee, you've had a chance to race in many of these enduros over the years, and the race at Lake Havasu has not always been a good one for you. Tell us a little bit about the accident that you had back about 10 years ago.
Well, I don't like seeing this picture to start with, because this crash represents 3 years of frustration and rehabilitation. But what actually happened here is I was running in the start about 7 seconds out of the start at about 140 miles an hour, and a boat lost control and veered in front of me, and I actually ran right over the top of the boat and cut it right in half, and of course you can see the boat blew into pieces.
Well, we're glad to see you're back in one piece, and great credit must go to the emergency medical crews that are always ready when the time comes. As we wind down to the final lap or two of the race with Don Johnson, you see the leader of Division III, the youngster out of Van Nuys, California, been running flawlessly all day. And there is your overall leader, the Siebold family boat out of St. Louis. Today it was son Mike, the 26-year-old, starting off the first hour. On the fuel change, they went to Father Bill. And Bill at the controls, finishing off a 4-hour effort. 2 days, the boat ran flawlessly like clockwork. Good pit work from the crew. And they will win by a 4-lap margin here at Lake Havasu. And there you see Father Bill getting out of his boat, getting congratulations from his crew. And there are the final standings here. The Siebold family taking the victory for the second time in a row. They have repeated the championship. And there are the final standings in the top 10. Finishing 7th overall and first in Division III is Don Johnson. As you can see, the press gathering around the trailer of Bill and Mike Siebold, a happy father-son combination. Victorious for the second year in a row. And here in the inspection area where the drivers are getting their boats looked over for the final time to make sure there are no discrepancies with the engines or the boats. Exciting two-day event that saw 75 of the world's best outboard race boat drivers battle for over $40,000 on this very unique but fast 2.5-mile boomerang course. The wind conditions played a critical part with many drivers going into the water. Attrition also took its toll, but Lee Sutter, the drivers that seemed to have the best ability were the ones who came home with the money and the checkered flag.
Well, Steve, I don't think there were a lot of surprises here. It's an extremely demanding event, and the veterans really prevailed.
So hats off to the Siebold family, winning back-to-back races. And Don Johnson, who took the Division III crown. And also in Mod VP, Chip Watkins, who won by over 2 laps. I want to thank you, Lee, for joining us today on the telecast, and we hope we can get you back again another time.
Enjoyed it, Steve. Thanks.
For Lee Sutter, I'm Steve Michael saying so long from Lake Havasu City, Arizona.